All right. I'm sure some more people are going to join as we get started, but let's get into it. So, for those, I do see some familiar names on the attendee list. So, hi to all of you. And for those who don't know me, I'm Rob Kowalski, and I'm a co-founder and the CEO of Zeetings. Thank you all for being here. This is a new initiative that we're doing to try and really help people get a better understanding of Zeetings, understand why we built the tool, but then, most importantly, just skill up and actually learn how to use the breadth of its features. So we'd love, this is, as I said, this is something new, so we'd love as much feedback as possible. If the things we don't cover, we're going to have some Q&A at the end. And like always, if there are things that you think we could do better in this process, we'd love to hear from you afterwards. So what I was hoping to do today was firstly give you a bit of a crash course. So Zeetings 101, where we'll run through from beginning to end how to make how to create a Zeeting, add content to it, all the way through to how to actually broadcast it or present it, share it if you don't want to present synchronously, and really get people engaged. And then look at the other end of it, which is what you do with all the data that you can collect through your polls and surveys, etc. So I'll step through each of those processes really, really slowly so that you get a good sense of how it all works. I do also want to introduce you quickly. One of my colleagues is here, Chelsea. So I met her.
Hello.
So Chelsea is going to be monitoring the question forum just on GoToWebinar on the right hand side of your screen. So any questions you post, she'll be on them really quickly and provide you with some answers. As I said, we're going to leave some time at the end where we can do a Q&A. So in terms of the format, I'm going to share my screen. What would be helpful is if a couple of you could just in the chat box just confirm you are seeing my screen, and then we'll get started. What we'll do is we'll first do a share screen, and I'm going to show you what Zedings is like as a presenter, and then we're going to switch over to a live Zedings presentation, which will in fact be the presentation that we create right now, and that'll give you the opportunity to see what Zeetings is like as a participant. So let's get started. So the first thing, what you're looking at now is the Zeetings home screen, and this is essentially a screen that houses all the Zeetings you've created. So each of these tiles represents a Zeeting that I've created. And you can do a few things here. So the first thing is each of these tiles you'll notice has a small menu. If I click that menu, I'm actually able to delete this presentation if I don't need it anymore, or duplicate or copy it. So that's really helpful when you're presenting a similar set of content or even the same content to more than one group of people, and you don't necessarily want to mix those people together. So you may want to keep your poll results separate, or you may want to actually just have different conversations with those different groups. So copying that Zeeting over is a really good way to do that. The other thing you'll see on the home screen is this following tab. And what this is a list of all the Zeetings that I've attended. So one of the important things about Zeetings is that we believe after a presentation, the conversation doesn't necessarily end and shouldn't have to end. So what Zeetings allows is that everyone who participated in your presentation can actually continue to be involved and can continue for that conversation to evolve. And if there is an area, and this is where you go to find those presentations that you've attended, you can jump back into any of them. You can see who's presented them. You can jump back in by just clicking, and you're right back in that Zeeting environment where you can view the content and continue a conversation. What I'm going to do now is just jump back onto the My Zeetings tab, and we're going to create a new Zeeting. So I'll just hit New Zeeting, And this is setting up a completely new environment which I can start adding content to. To give you a bit of context, though, the way we view a Zeeting is that it's really a completely new way of engaging a group of people. And what makes it really special is that when you engage a group of people through Zeetings, not only are they encouraged to actually participate and get involved, but each person actually adds to the rest of the group's experience. So what you'll see is, everyone is empowered to add comments and reply to each other's comments, to ask questions and answer questions. When there's a poll, people get to vote, but people also get to see how the rest of the group voted. So I'll step you through how each of these work in a practical sense. But philosophically, what's important to understand is that Zeeting is really about a shared experience. So it's moving from an environment where there's one person, whether it's a presentation or in a classroom or at a big event. It's moving away from an environment where it's one person talking at a group, and that group is expected to sort of lean back and just passively listen. And it's transforming that into an environment where it's a conversation. So everyone gets to lean in, they can use whatever device they like, and they can actively participate and get involved. But let's get practical. So what you'll see on the screen are different types of content that you can add to your Zeeting. Up the top, because this is a new Zeeting, I can give it a name, and I've got a bunch of other tools on the right-hand side that I'll walk you through. So let's give this one a name. So I'll call it Webinar 13 April 16. Right. Now the next thing I'll do is I really want to start building out my presentation. So the first thing I can do is add existing content that I've created. So one of the things that's important to know about Zedings is the platform doesn't require that you change the way you're currently producing content. So it's compatible with existing formats and authoring tools like PowerPoint, or you can just upload really any document in the form of a PDF. So how that works is I can either click this tile, drag and drop files onto this area, or choose a file directly from my computer. Some other options, I can also link to any of the major cloud service providers, and that's a way of accessing your documents there. What I did want to show you as well, though, is a quick, a little trick that's a really quick way of uploading content. So in addition to clicking the tile, something some of you may want to do is just drag and drop your presentation. If you just drop it onto that area of the tile, it's going to start uploading automatically. So you can see there, that file's now uploading. So one of the things that we've been really focused on is making sure that your content looks exactly the way it should, even after you've uploaded it into Zeetings. And that means a few things for us. So the first is that no matter what device people are viewing your presentation on, the content should look perfect. So Zeetings works whether you're on a laptop or PC, or a tablet or a mobile phone. We make sure that your slides, whether they were PDF or they were a PowerPoint, look the way they should. The other thing is that we want to preserve exactly the way you intended for that presentation to play out. So what I mean by that, as an example, if you upload a PowerPoint deck and that deck has animations, we're going to preserve those animations and make them work within the platform. So, we're not just taking a static screenshot of your slides, we're actually going to make them work exactly the way you intended. So what you can see now is I've uploaded that set of content, and I've got, about 9 slides here. Each of these thumbnails, represents a different slide. I'll close the activity feed. We'll get there in a second. So I've now converted these slides. If I want to look at them in a larger view, I can just click. If I want to go back to the thumbnail view, I can switch views using these controls in the bottom right-hand corner. So I'll switch back. But let's look at some of the other content types. So I've got two options to go back to adding content. Either I can use this big plus, or I can use the Add Content button on the top menu. So I'm going to try that one. Now let's explore some of these other features. So I won't run through all of them, but I'll highlight a few. So firstly, polls. So this is really a feature that people have loved, and what we've found is that polls are a really great way of getting people engaged in a controlled format. So polls allow you to really structure the question, and they're great whether you just want to use them to entertain an audience or engage them, or for sort of harder needs, such as collecting critical information from an audience. So we have 5 poll types, all the ones you'd expect, like scale ratings and multiple choice and free text polls. But we also have, some more creative ones, like this thumbs up, thumbs down poll. So all you do to select a poll, you just choose the format you like, and then there's a really, really simple editor. So we've tried to make this. We've cut out all the clutter and made this as quick as possible to use. So I can ask questions like, as an example, I can say, how fast or can I create polls really quickly? I'll let you guys vote on this one later, and you can tell me what you think. I'll say not really. And you can then customize the poll. So if you have brand colors, or you want to just make your polls consistent with the rest of your presentation, you can really, you can go to town customizing. So I'll do that, and maybe I'll just tone it down a little bit. Right. So that's all it does. Really easy. You can also, if you are trying to match a very specific color, you can just enter the hex code for that color. And that's as simple as it takes to create a poll. I'll hit create. And we're back on our thumbnail view. That poll's now been added to the end of my presentation. Let's jump in and add a few more items of content. So I'll use this Add Content button now. And something that we've learned is really a nightmare is, embedding videos directly into a presentation. So we offer a couple ways to do that. First, if the video is public on YouTube, you can go and select it. So I'm going to do that now. But another option is to use our embed content tool, which I'll come to in a minute. So I'll give you a quick example. I click Add a YouTube video. All I need to do is jump onto YouTube. Not sure if you're Game of Thrones fans, but why don't we try this one? And all I need to do is copy the URL for that YouTube video. I'm going to paste it into this box. And within seconds, it's generated a preview. You can actually watch that preview, but I'm going to just say, let's add that to the presentation. And again, it's added to the end. Now, I won't go through each of the different content types, but embed content is a way of really bringing the internet directly into your presentation. So wherever you are on the web, where there's content that's embeddable, and that could be anything from a Google map to a GIF to a video to a tweet, you can just enter the embed code here. Similar to YouTube, you'll see the preview, and you can add it to your presentation. A web link. So this is a pretty cool feature. One of the things we've seen is that during your presentation, you may actually want to point people to somewhere on the internet. So that might be your website. It might be a Twitter page that you want people to follow. It might be a white paper with additional information about whatever topic you're presenting on. And this is a really quick way to do it. So to give you an example, I might go to Twitter, and I'll go to the Zedings Twitter page. And what I can do, I'm going to create what we call the web link slide with that link. So I'm just going to say, follow us. I'll paste the link. Again, I can choose the color, and I'll show you how this works from a participant perspective when we get to that in a few minutes. And I'll just create, add it to the end. The final one I want to add is a Q&A session. So this is a content type specifically designed for facilitating Q&A sessions. So one of the things we found with Q&A sessions is they can be really problematic. So often you'll get to the Q&A section of an event and there'll be no questions. Other times there'll be too many questions. Other problems we found is that people often can't hear the question that's been asked. So someone's at the back of the room, people are running around like crazy with the roving mic, and either the mic doesn't get there in time or people don't speak up and present their question. So this content type that we call a Q&A session really solves all those issues, and in a few minutes I'll show you exactly how it works. So I've now got the basis of my presentation. I started off with my 9 slides, and I've now added a poll, a video, a web link, and a Q&A session. The next thing to do is really to get this presentation into the right order. So what I'm going to do next is really jumble these slides around to meet my needs. So the first thing I can do is very simply, this poll, I may want it between slides 2 and 3. I can literally just drag and drop and pop it into place. It's as simple as that. Let's say this YouTube video, I want between slides 4 and 5. I can drag and drop. Something else I can also do is just click the menu, and there's this Move To option. If I click in that box, I can pick exactly where I'd like it. So I'll say I'd like that in position 5, and it slides and everything moves around. So really simple to use. The beauty of the Move To option is you could actually use it on mobile as well. So the entire interface will work on any device. And if you're on your phone where drag and drop isn't an option because it's a touch interface, you can still you could still click the Move To, punch in a number, and away you go. So let's move that to position 12. Now, as you would have seen, these menus on each slide or each thumbnail, there are some other options. So you can obviously delete, you can copy, and you can also edit. So if you have created a poll, you can jump back in and edit it really easily. Something important to note is that once voting on that poll has started, you can no longer edit it. So I've now got the basis of my presentation, and Zedings really offers you a couple ways of presenting that out into the world. So back up on this top menu, you'll see there's something called Share, and there's another one called Broadcast. And these are the two main ways that you can actually distribute your content to a group of people. The difference, and I'm going to start with Share, between Share and Broadcast is Share is all about allowing people to access your content or your Zeeting in their own time and page through it on their own. And Broadcast is all about you presenting live. So you control exactly what they see and when they see it. Something that's important to note, though, is Zeetings is all about conversation and collaboration. So even if you share your presentation using the share functionality and people are looking at it on their own, they can still actively engage with all the interactive elements. So they're still going to be able to vote in polls, they'll still be able to leave comments and ask questions, they'll still be able to take notes. And so the Zeeting, rather than just sending a presentation as an attachment, it still feels alive and it's still an environment that people can collaborate in. So you've got a couple options with Share, and I'll run through them quickly. The first thing to note is that every Zeeting has a unique URL that you can copy and distribute. But the important thing is you've got a couple different privacy settings. So you can make your Zeeting private or public. If your Zeeting is private, then you actually need to invite those people using this widget at the bottom of the screen. So as an example, I'll quickly invite Chelsea, who's here with me. You now have her email address, so feel free to use it if you've got any support questions. You can leave a message. So I'm going to send that to Chelsea. I can see the invite was sent. Still pending. She hasn't opened it just yet. I can resend it. But what I can also do is actually cancel the invitation and revoke her access. So Zeetings is a great way of actually distributing content in a controlled way. So if you have a set of slides that you actually want to control who sees them, this is a great way to do it because you can actually send them out. Only people you allow access to that presentation can view it, and you can change either the content in your presentation back on that thumbnail view after you've sent it, or you can actually revoke access completely. So as an example, one of the areas we're seeing that used is people often give a presentation with Zeetings, and then they actually want to distribute their slides to the group afterwards. So they use the share functionality to do that, but what often happens is they presented a bunch of slides that were confidential, so all they do is they remove those slides from the pack and share the rest, and that's fine. Something that we often see people doing as well is presenting a set of slides and then wanting to actually share more information. So what they can do afterwards is actually add additional slides to that deck. The important thing to know is that whatever version people are accessing will always be the most up-to-date version of that presentation. The other option is public, and with public, it doesn't show up in Google search results or anything like that, but it does mean that anyone with this link can access the document. So if it's not something overly confidential, you can just copy that link, paste it in an email. You may even want to share it, in social networks or elsewhere, and people just with one click, they can access your presentation. So that's share. And now let's jump to broadcast. So broadcast is it's the heart of Zedings. So Zedings, where we started, was really this idea that when a group of people come together in the same space, or at least at the same time, so some of them may be in the room and some of them may be remote, a huge opportunity exists. So one of the things we realized really early is that it's a lot of effort bringing people together. There's a lot of cost in time and money. People have to stop whatever they're doing to attend a meeting or a lesson or an event. But at the same time, there's a lot of value. The problem is that value is trapped. And what Zeetings is all about is unlocking that value. So trying to get everyone in that presentation, you've got all the effort of bringing them together. It's how do you actually unlock their ideas? How do you unlock what they think about your presentation, their feedback, their thoughts, the questions they have? So broadcast is really a way to do that. It's about pulling everyone together, controlling the flow of the presentation, but empowering everyone in that room or tuning in remotely to actually get actively engaged. So how does broadcast work? So the first thing you can see on the screen here is there's a broadcast link. It looks similar to the share link, but it's much shorter. So this broadcast link, what I'd encourage you to do is to choose something that is not specific to a particular presentation, but rather generic to your name or to your company. So you create your broadcast link when you first sign up for Zeetings. Many of you would have done this already. Mine is just a demo. And how this broadcast link comes into play, and we're going to do this in a couple minutes, is that when you're ready to present live to a group, that's the link they go to. They can go to it from any device, and they're not going to be required unless you require it to create a Zeetings account or to even provide a name or any details. So it's a really, really friction-free way of people joining your presentation. And this is something that's really important when you are using Zeetings, is that we've tried really hard to make sure there's no barrier. So, many tools to get started for a participant is really hard. They have to download software, they have to install an app, they have to create an account. With Zeetings, there's none of that. They literally just go to this URL. It's a personal URL to you, so it's easy to communicate. And And once they're there, the presentation unfolds. That URL is only live when you're broadcasting, and if any of you have a web browser open, you can actually go to zeetings.com/demo now, and you'll see that I'm off air. And as soon as I start broadcasting, that screen will automatically come alive and pull people into my presentation. So I've got a couple options with around a broadcast. The first is to require some information up front. So there are going to be those presentations where you actually do want to capture people's name or their email, or to include an access code. So really simple, you just check the boxes and away you go. When people join, they're going to be asked to give that information. Typically though, we find people just give them the URL and they're good to go. We also have a bunch of advanced settings. I won't run through each of these. They're really about turning on and off various features. But the first one is worth spending a few minutes on, or a minute on, and that's that participants can follow your Zeeting. So what you'll remember that when I first showed you that home screen, right at the start of the session, there was that following tab of all the presentations that I was following. So these were all presentations that I'd attended or that had been shared with me. This is where you enable that functionality. So how this works is that you can choose whether or not people can re-access your presentation after your broadcast. And what that means is they can view your slides, but they can also interact with all the other elements. So if it is something you want, if you really want to continue that conversation from that live environment when you present all the way through afterwards, this is the way to do it. You should enable people to follow that Zeeting. As an example, we often find that in education environments, teachers or professors actually want students to have access to the slides and presentation material for the course of the semester. In a corporate environment, it's a really simple way of distributing slides. If it's an event with customers, you avoid often people running up and asking you to email them their slides. But it's also a way of creating more touch points, whether it's with employees or with customers or other stakeholders. So each time people access that Zeeting, it's another opportunity for you to strike up a conversation with them and really let it evolve. So now for the fun bit, and that's the broadcast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press start broadcasting, and what I'd like each of you to do is on a new tab on your browser to just go to zeetings.com/demo, and you will see the presentation. So start broadcasting, and I will give you all a few minutes to do that. So it's just zeetings.com/demo. I can see a few people jumping in. Looks like we're up to 5, up to 6, and the numbers are growing. Great, so it looks like everyone's managing to get in. All right, and if anyone's having any trouble, just feel free to use the questions or the chat functionality on the webinar, and Chelsea can help you out. So what we're looking at now is my first slide, and you'll see this is a good just a good tip for when you do give presentations with Zedings. Something we like to encourage is that for your first slide you actually display that URL. So thinking about that in context, if you picture a room full of people, they're all ready for your presentation. Your first slide tells them exactly what they need to do. It displays your personal URL, and before you start, people already can jump onto that URL. Now, the important thing to note is I'm in control, but we can all collaborate. So as I turn the page, what you're going to see is that it will automatically update the page on your device. Now, what's pretty cool about Zedings is that this isn't a screen sharing tool, and you're not actually seeing a video of what I'm looking at. You're literally looking at my slides hosted in the cloud. So what that means is that You can look at it from any device. As I said, you didn't need to install or download any software, but it also means that the slides look perfect. So they're crisp. There's no latency issues. There's no resolution issues. They all look just the way they would if you just put your slides up on a big screen. So here's my second slide. And now from memory, I think we put our poll in position 3. So there we go. So what you can do, looks like we've got a vote. Maybe I'll ask Chelsea to vote no, just so you can see how this works and that it's not. We can pull that 100% down a little bit. But as you can see, polls are visual. As people vote, the results bounce around in real time. What I can also do is I can create polls on the fly and broadcast them. So even though I'm in this presentation now, I'm actually going to go in and create a poll. For those interested, you can watch me do it on the share screen, but it might be easier to just stay in Zeetings. So I'm going to quickly create a poll. Okay. And let's try this one. So it's as quick as that. Even on the fly, midway through a presentation, you can create a poll. And this will give you a good idea of how those numbers bounce around as people present. So looks like we've got a pretty even split, shift towards presentations and remote meetings, teaching and training coming up from behind, a few of you using it for events as well. So this is really great when you have an environment that's a little bit more flexible. So where you may actually be presenting a set of content, and based on what's happening in the room in the moment, you may actually want to throw an additional poll or even new content, push it out there, get immediate feedback, and continue. So now we're done with that poll. I can keep paging through. And here are my slides again. Now the next thing I wanted to show you is I actually want to pan your attention. We'll come back to the presentation in a second, but I want to pan your attention to the left-hand side of the screen. And you'll see there are 3 icons there. There's one of a speech bubble that you'll see has a notification on it. There's one of people, and there's one of a pencil. What I'd like you to do is just click that speech bubble. And this is the activity feed. So this is an area where people in your presentations, your meetings, your classrooms can actually post questions or comments. You can see a bunch of comments are flowing in there already. Something that's cool to point out is the first comment was a question, and it was anonymous. This is a really, really powerful way of engaging audiences. Zedings anonymity, we found, is a really good way of surfacing information that may not otherwise have been surfaced. So we've seen that play out in a few ways. In the corporate environment, we've seen companies using Zeetings to address issues that are sometimes more difficult to address than others. So one example we saw recently, which was really cool, is there was a session on mental health in the workplace. Now that's a topic that it's really difficult to get people in a corporate environment to put their hand up and start talking openly about. But what the activity feed with the anonymity allowed was that people in the session could actually post their questions and comments. There was a mental health expert at the front of the room, and they could engage in a conversation but maintaining that anonymity. And it was a really powerful way of not just superficially guessing what people want to hear about, but really understanding what they want to know, and then addressing it. Another thing that's important to note is, so this feed is ongoing, and there you go. You can see some comments testing out this anonymous thing. You can see that comment got a few likes. So what's pretty cool about Zeetings is that it's really, this activity feed is quite a social environment. So it really allows you to crowdsource the best ideas, questions, comments from a crowd, and then use the crowd to sort of sort and filter those comments. So, a few of these comments have already started to get some likes. Now, what you'll see is towards the top of the activity feed, you can actually sort the comments by latest or by likes. So I'm going to sort it by likes. And the one with the most likes at the moment is this testing out this anonymous thing. So whoever said that, they may want to put their name to it and get the credit. But what's cool about that is, if you're facilitating a Q&A session, what often happens today is it seems like the activity feed is now going crazy, which is great to see. So, what often happens today in a Q&A session is a few people get to ask their questions, and it's not necessarily the best questions or the questions everyone wants answered. It's either the first person to get to the mic, or it's the loudest voice in the room if it's a small meeting, or it's the student that feels confident enough to ask their question. But what often happens is that there's really this question that's a burning question that everyone has, but no one has the confidence to ask. And how the activity feed deals with that is, firstly, someone can post the question anonymously, so it's out in the open, but then everyone can like it. And you can sort the feed by most likes. So you can start to really get a sense of what questions people most want answered, and you can start with those. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump ahead, because we are talking about the activity feed and questions, to that Q&A session that we added to this presentation. So what you'll see and I want to show you how this works. This is a relatively new feature, and we've really got a great response to it. So on the right-hand side of the page, you'll see it says Ask Me Anything, and if you click the button under the Ask Me Anything, it'll point you to the activity feed and get you to ask your question. What I can do now as a presenter, though, is I can actually pick any question in that activity feed and automatically display it on the screen on the right. So there was a good one here. It was also anonymous. I'm going to select it just with one click. And the question was, can you allow multiple responses? So what this Q&A session functionality does is actually allows you to cherry pick the questions you want to answer, display them on the big screen, and then address it. And what that does is it gets everyone on the same page. But another more subtle thing it does is it really makes your audience feel empowered. So when someone's sitting in the back of the room, they may not be comfortable enough asking a question, or even if they are, all of a sudden now their question is up in lights on the big screen. And we found that's a really powerful way of making an audience not just an audience, but actually participants of that presentation. It's now their content, instantly part of the presentation. So just to answer this question, can you allow multiple responses? This wasn't a seeded question, I promise. But actually, as of today, Zedings does allow multiple responses. So if there's some few minutes at the end, I'd be happy to show how that works. But we now do offer that option, which is pretty cool. I like this comment, so I'm going to post it up on the screen too. Thank you. This one's another great one. Thanks, Bashir. So as you can see, it's very, very quick. And if people are interested, we're going to get to Q&A in about 5 minutes. I'm happy to show on the screen share exactly how to move comments from activity to the screen. But it's really simple. It's just one click. One final point just about the activity feed is something we do offer is also what we call the activity wall. So I won't demo this feature now, but with one click, what you can also do is take that activity feed and display it as a full screen live view that you can put up on a screen. So what it's a bit like is when you go to a big conference and they often have a Twitter feed and it's just displaying all the tweets as they come in real time. Zedings allows you to create a very similar thing with the activity feed, with the comments and questions. And what I'd encourage you with the activity feed is to really think quite broadly. So, an obvious use case is to crowdsource questions from the audience and to use the audience to to like which ones they most want answered. But we've seen some really creative uses of the activity feed. So we've seen people use it for brainstorming sessions where they'll throw out an idea and instantly get back a whole bunch of feedback on that idea. So, think really broadly. It's a really flexible space to collaborate. The next icon below that activity feed was that red people icon. And if you want to select that, we'll see, I can see a bunch of people have actually signed in. This is an environment where people in your Zeeting can actually meet each other. So for those of you who don't have a Zedings account or aren't signed into your Zedings account presently, you'll see that it asks you to sign in. And the reason for this is that once you sign in, your profile picture and your name will be displayed to others, but so will theirs be displayed to you. So this is sort of a private area for people with Zedings accounts. It's very quick to sign in. Something you can also do is if you see someone that you'd like an introduction to, or this would be one person in your audience looking for an introduction to another, you can actually click on their name and send them a message. And I can see, even since I started talking, a couple other people have signed in. The final tool I wanted to show you on the left-hand side is this Notes tool. So Notes is really a way of giving people all the functionality they need during your presentation without distraction directly within the tool. So this is a really simple to use notepad. You literally just, you click in it and you start typing. And, we're finding that in many environments, this is just a great way of people taking notes without leaving the presentation environment. It also works on mobile, so, you're instantly providing your participants with that tool, regardless of platform. So that's the activity. I know we did add a bunch of other slides to this presentation, so I'll just give you a quick idea of how those look. And then I'll show you how this all comes together with the analytics. So the first one was that web link slide we added with the Twitter link. So you'll see there's a button there. You can click that button. What it's going to do is open a tab that directly with that link. So that's a really simple way of pointing people to another page. The other thing I'd like to show you was that YouTube video. So I'm going to open it up here. On my screen, the YouTube video plays. I'll just turn off the sound quickly. What you'll all notice is that on your screens, you get sort of a holding pattern. And the reason for that is if you're presenting to a room full of people, firstly, just to maintain the Wi-Fi, the bandwidth, you don't want everyone to be watching the same video at the same time. The second reason is that if everyone is slightly out of sync, it's just going to create a really big noise. But the other reason is a video is a really nice way of getting everyone's attention back at the front of the room. Let them experience that video together on the big screen, and then they can jump back on their devices. And sort of what people do is they really multi-process and they jump between the two views. Now, there's one more aspect of Zedings I wanted to talk a bit about, and then we'll have about 15 minutes for Q&A, and that's really analytics. One of the most powerful things about Zedings is that as soon as you get people to engage using their devices, you can actually start tracking all those interactions that they have with your presentation. So I know for me personally, when I used to present in the past, it's a really isolating experience because you look out into a room and you really have no idea what anyone's thinking. All you see is a sea of faces, really looking back at you, and it's really hard to gauge exactly, are they following, are they not following, are they distracted, are they with you, and are they engaged? What do they think about the topic? Are you moving too quickly or are you moving too slowly? These are all questions that you can start to answer with Zeetings. So the Zeetings analytics section and the analytics dashboard is really an area that pulls together all this content, all a whole bunch of data that you collect during your presentation, so that you can then analyze and really understand your audience. So really simple, the most simple analytic is really poll results. So, using polls at discrete points within your presentation to kind of gauge the audience is a really good way of understanding them. And it really goes to the heart of this idea that, to speak, but to speak is one thing, but to have a conversation is also about listening. So it's about using things like polls to get feedback. But Zeetings can really go further. So we have a whole suite of tools that allow you to capture information from your audience. So if you're presenting to a group that you don't know, you may want to capture their email address on the way in. Something we didn't add to this presentation was a survey. So, something we're seeing a lot of is at the end of a presentation, you may want to conduct a quick survey. It's in the moment, it's fresh while people are thinking about your content. It's far, far more powerful to do it in the moment and then analyze the data within Zedings, then send out a survey, a day or a couple of days later. What we found is that, asking people really quick questions during a presentation or directly after actually gets, firstly, a higher response rate because they're there and they're present. But secondly, it actually gets you a much better sample of responses because, when you do a survey after an event, often what you find is the people that really hated it give you answers and the people that really loved it give you answers. But, the bulk of people that sit in the middle are silent. And it's that silent majority that actually represent your audience that you really want to hear from often. So the Zeetings analytics package is really about closing the loop between engaging an audience and then using that engagement to really understand them. So those are really the main aspects I wanted to cover today. What I'm going to do is open the activity feed and actually address any questions or comments anyone has live. So feel free to jump in there and ask them, and I'll just sort of monitor them and answer as best I can. So I can see someone just posted a question. I heard that you have surveys. Is that something you have already demoed? Would love to hear more about it. So what I'll do is I'll actually add, it's not something we've demoed just yet. What I'm going to do is add a quick survey right now to this presentation, and I'd love for each of you to answer it. So if you give me a second, that's all it takes. Also, what did you think of this webinar? So I'm going to post that survey up. And what you should know about, something we often get asked is what's the difference between a survey and a poll? And the key difference is that a survey collects information for you as the presenter and doesn't display it to the group. Whereas a poll is really about collecting information from everyone, but then displaying that information to the whole group. So whatever data you enter, whatever your response is to this survey I've just put up on the screen, that's only going to come to me directly. So that's the survey tool. It's very simple. At this time, it is a relatively new feature, and we're looking to expand its capabilities. So we are looking for feedback on it of what functionality you think's missing. At the moment, you can ask for some basic fields. So you can request people's names, you can request their emails, and you can request free flow text. And this is the one I put up as an example of all three of those. But we do understand that there's a whole range of question formats similar to the polls that I imagine people will ultimately want in surveys. So please let us know if that's something that's important to you, and we can sort of prioritize our roadmap accordingly. Okay, I'm going to I'll jump back into the activity feed. Okay. All right, here's a question from Kerry. If I use Zeetings for training and wanted to take attendance for compliance purposes, is there a way to upload the participant list into Excel such that it would include the start and finish time and what time they responded to polls within training-based log data? So Yeah, this question for the group, actually what I'll do is, so we know which one I'm looking at, I'll go back to that Q&A slide and I'm going to post it on the main screen. So this is a really great question, and this is exactly really why we designed Zeetings, because there are all these environments like training where the content and the engagement is one piece, but you actually have to track a bunch of stuff in the background. So the short answer to your question is we do some of that today, and we intend to do the rest soon. So what you can do today is you can request people's. What you would do is you would request people's names when they join your presentation or when you share the presentation out with them. So they give you their name and their email or some other bit of information that you require. That list of participants can be exported. So in the Insights report, you'll see the full list of participants. You'll also see the times that each of them logged in. You don't see today the time they logged out. So that's a great suggestion, and that's a relatively straightforward thing to do. I'll take that away as for the roadmap, and Chelsea will make a note, and we can update you when that's ready. But you will see a list of all the names, the emails if you required them, and the time they logged in. And that data can be exported to Excel. So we're close to doing all of it, but we do a good chunk of it today. Okay, let's see. Okay, so Gail, I'll address, you had a question here about participants using audio to ask questions. So as we stand today, Zedings is really provides the visual aspects of the presentation. And what we found is, or the way it's used currently, is that it's a complement to an audio tool. So as an example, today, I'm obviously using GoToWebinar for the audio component, but using Zeetings for the visual component. So today we don't offer audio for participants to ask questions. It's something we are exploring and very keen to introduce in the future. But today people are using Zeetings in parallel with another audio solution. So anything from a traditional conference line where people are just dialing in on their phones and then looking at Zeetings, all the way up to using a GoToWebinar or a WebEx style tool where people get the audio through their computer and use Zeetings for the visual. Okay, let's have a quick look. Thanks. So that's a really good. That's appreciate the feedback there on some different question formats for surveys. So thank you for that. Okay. Another quick question from Gail. Can I use this platform with Blackboard? So we are finding that so Zeetings sits, it's all on the web, and because it doesn't require any apps, it integrates quite neatly with LMSs like Blackboard, as an example. You've really got two options there, and this is probably a conversation we should take offline, and we can delve into a bit of detail. But what we are seeing is many professors and teachers are linking out from an LMS. On the LMS, they just put the link to that Zeeting. People click, and then it opens in another tab on the browser. Alternatively, you can actually embed the whole Zeeting into a tool like Blackboard or platform like Blackboard. So both those options are possible. It really just it's really just about what your particular needs are. So happy to kind of follow up with you offline, and we can get into the detail. Okay, I'll have a quick. Here's another question. How do we take the last poll off the main screen so people are happy to be honest and the presenter doesn't feel self-conscious? This is a good question. So one way you can do it is to actually use surveys instead of polls. So you can accept feedback privately rather than all up on the main screen. Something we are introducing relatively soon is the option to reveal the results or not reveal the results. So So we will have some more functionality around that now. But the best way to do it today is when you do want to solicit feedback that's not necessarily for consumption of the whole group. I'd suggest you use a survey and get that feedback yourself. Just like the polls, all the feedback that comes through a survey sits in your insights reports, so you can access it later. Okay. Cool. There's a question here about using a wingman. So it really depends on the environment. What we find, Zeetings was really designed to be used by an individual on their own. So it's absolutely, it can absolutely and is generally used, just by an individual, front of the room, single computer. The slides are up on the big screen using Zeetings, and that's totally fine. Where we have found that often, like a wingman or a moderator makes sense is when you're dealing with sort of larger audiences. So often at events, it's useful to have someone monitoring the activity feed and answering questions, as we've done today with Chelsea. But there's absolutely no reason you can't use Zeetings on your own. So I think an important thing, if we just take a step back with Zedings, is there's a lot of functionality, but what we really strive to encourage users to do is to not think how they can use all the functionality, but rather think, what is it you're actually trying to achieve in that presentation or that lesson or at that event, and then to pick and choose which functionality best suits it. So there are certain tools or certain bits of the product that may require you to be more hands-on. For example, if you're picking questions out of the Q&A session, you need to be monitoring that in real time, and in a big environment, that may require someone to help you. But really, it's about saying, what are you actually trying to achieve? Things like polls really don't need any help from an additional person. So it's really about deciding, like, what information you're trying to solicit from an audience, in what way you're trying to engage them, and what's the overall objective of that session, and then to pick and choose the features around it. So you can use a wingman, but it's really not needed. Something we do as well is one-on-one demos. So if at the end of this webinar you still feel like you could use a hand walking through some of the features and talking through a particular type of session that you're presenting, we can do that too and kind of walk you through exactly how that would work without additional help. Okay, so let's have a look. Looks like there are a couple. There's a new question here. To try and capture level 2 or 3 data, can you trigger survey to go to participants at a later date? So yes, what you can do is everyone that's following that Zeeting will get updated when new information is added. So what you can do is, at a later date, you can throw a survey directly into that same presentation. You can then use the activity feed to send everyone a message. So you can just say, hey, I've added a new survey, come check it out. By posting a comment in the activity feed when you're not presenting live, will actually email everyone that's following that presentation and let them know that new comment. So you'll post it, they'll get an email, in the email will be a link, and they can jump back into that presentation and, as an example, answer your new survey. They could also look at new slides, or look at a new poll, or perhaps look at a video you've uploaded. So yes, you can absolutely do that. Okay, we're right on about time. It's 2:01 p.m. I'm happy to stick around for a few more minutes. If people have more questions, just feel free to post them in the activity feed. But for everyone else, thank you so much for attending. As I said, it's the first one we've done in Australia time, so I'm a little bit more awake than the last one, which was at 6 a.m. And we'd love to keep doing these. So, firstly, the feedback's really valuable to improve this Zeetings 101 session. But what we will also do is have more advanced sessions. So we'll do deep dives into just the activity feed or just polling. We'll also be doing webinars on looking at case studies. So, we've been working with some of Australia's largest companies, some large universities within Australia. And what we're very keen to share is the lessons that we've learned working with them and that they've learned working with us, so that you can really start to understand Zedings in context. So look out for those webinars. They'll be coming up soon. And hopefully this was helpful. Yeah, thanks for joining.